Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here today. We're grateful to have this opportunity for the panel and discuss this topic of digital transformation and the infrastructure and asset lifecycle management. I'm Michael Sullivan. I'm with Trimble, Director of Sales for our digital project delivery team, which focuses on the asset lifecycle management technologies within local government. I have some awesome panelists here today. They are really the stars of the show. I will be introducing them by name, and then I'll allow them each to, of course, talk a little bit more about who they are with, their role, and the responsibilities within their organization as well. So I would go in order. Should I go ladies first? Sure. Sorry, Mark, you're out of order. So ladies first, we have Angela Marinas with the City of Fort Lauderdale. Next to her, we have Jordan Cram with Enstoa. And then I'll swing back to Mark Seastead with Black & Veatch. Angela, would you like to share a little bit more about your role and what you do for the city?
Sure. Angela Marinas, I'm the Director of ERP for the City of Fort Lauderdale, where I lead a team of implementation and the production team. We're focused mainly on delivering enterprise solutions that include financials, HR, and the backbone of the city.
Awesome.
Hello, everybody. It is nice to
Might have to share.
share.
There you go.
Test. Hi, everybody. It is great to be with you here today. Again, my name is Jordan. I'm the CEO of Enstoa. Enstoa is a company focuses on digital transformation for the built environment. Capital projects, execution, space, assets, and so forth. Very eager to share with you all the many lessons learned around digital transformation and brainstorm on those strategies. So thank you all.
Hi, I'm Mark. I lead our information solutions practice for Black & Veatch in our government and environment space. Largely that's dealing with enterprise asset management solutions, spatial technologies, and all the fun integrations that go along with those processes and systems. So I think that's the same thing. We've got some good experience. I'd tell some good stories. And well, we can always pick on our moderator too.
I get picked on enough. It's okay. Thank you. So digital transformation. Everyone in here knows what that is, right? How many times have you heard that today? Like 6, 10 times? I'm going to attempt to provide a simple definition. And then what we will do thereafter is we will think about this life cycle in 2 parts. The beginning of the asset's life through the planning, the constructing, and the closing of it, through the maintaining, all the way through end of life. So we'll have 2 parts of questions in which we will work through as well. So digital transformation. What is it? It is the process by which organizations are embedding, of course, technology, hence the digital, but also people and processes into their businesses to drive fundamental change. Sounds great. So why are we doing this, right? What are the benefits? So of course, technology, we always hear, oh, it's efficient. Yes, it's efficient. Provides greater agility for various organizations as well. But ultimately, we're looking to unlock new value for the organization's employees, customers, and of course, stakeholders. So now that we have defined this, we're going to move to the section, as I just discussed. We're going to talk about the beginning of the asset, its life. So the first part, which we'll be thinking about again, is like planning, design, pre-construction activities, construction through closeout, before you get to handoff, of course. So I will do these in the order that I have them on the paper. All right. Mark, you're up. You're the icebreaker. So you're with Black & Veatch. You mind discussing a little bit and sharing with us, why are you guys excited about digital project delivery? And maybe give us some examples of what that means to you guys and what are you doing with your practice to deploy that with various owners today?
Sure. There's several examples. Primarily as an engineering consulting firm, we're doing an awful lot of design work. And through the years, obviously, what we started to see is the increased reliance and expectation that, those traditional design engineering plans and drawings and the things that go along with that are going to now be delivered in electronic formats. Well, that's obviously evolved from, an electronic PDF which technically met the term, but it was very, less than useful, to actually providing more meaningful content and of all the things that we really want to do with information and data. So to take the basic asset, the ability to say, hey, as part of my planning process, I want to be able to turn over the asset ownership so that I know, what type of asset do I have? What class does it belong to? What is the criticality associated with it? What are my expectations of how I'm supposed to manage, maintain, and optimize the life cycle of that asset? No longer has to be tied up in a binder on a deliverable or in an O&M guide or on a spreadsheet of my asset register that I'm submitting. Now, what brings us excitement is that as part of, whether it's a design build process or just as part of your delivery, the ability to deliver that data in the format that our clients need makes that information infinitely more useful. Because one of the things that we found is there always is a backlog of people saying from an asset management perspective, it might take me 6, 8, 9 months from the time I turn over a set of assets and a project completion is for the time to actually make that information available within the work management system or the ERP system or any of those systems. And we're effectively being able to start to remove and eliminate that portion of delay from that life cycle. And so now you're getting that instant benefit so that as you're turning over the actual useful assets, you're also turning over, and here's how we maintain it, here's the cost of ownership. And so there's no longer that lag in or the duplication of data and the inherent errors that are coming from that. So it's a few ways.
Great. And then, of course, as I call on you for your next question, if you want to add a little spice to what one of the others said, that's fine too. Angela, I'll go to you right down in order here. In your years working with the city, how many years has it been now?
2.5 years.
2.5 years. Okay. So what can you tell us about digital transformation at the city of Fort Lauderdale, and what is that being used within capital programs, and what that experience has been like?
At the city of Fort Lauderdale, our legacy system, for example, our financial systems, were over 60 years old. So we truly went from paper, wet signatures, into a complete and integrated solution. Then today, we went live on October the 4th with our ERP system. Our phase 1 included financials, supply chain, fixed assets. We have a pilot program to do inventory control. To, I think, Mark's statement earlier, a lot of it was managed in Excel spreadsheets and Word documents and somebody's desktop. Today is transparent, visible across the city. Anyone can have the visibility of our inventory, especially around public works, which we decided to go with them first because of the complexities and the number of pipes and screws and things that they had. We said, if it works at Public Works, it probably work anywhere else. So that's one of the goals that we have. We've had a lot of success, a lot of challenges, without a doubt, because we went from a very old legacy system, very old business processes. We had to adapt and change. And one of the goals that we set out very early on is to go vanilla. So we decided that we were going to utilize the system straight out of the box. So anything that came out of the box, that's exactly what we did. We've been recognized for not customizing any of the processes. We did a lot of changes and modifications within the city. And we're still there. We're still doing it. So adjusting as we go. But it's been really challenging, but very rewarding. And now we're focused on our phase 2, which is our HR payroll. We're planning to go live with them by the early January 2024. Again, same process, very out of the box, utilize as much as we can from the technology that is available. But beyond ERP, we're looking at how the city itself can move away from a lot of the manual processes. There's a lot of manual documentation, there's manual signatures. We want to focus on smart cities in the near future because our foundation, we wanted to make sure our backbone of the organization was strong enough to, and the infrastructure was strong enough to build on and build a smart city.
Oh, that's great. I am going to go off script for a second. You said some interesting things in there, so I might throw a wrench in here. You mentioned, well, it's a two-part question. I'm curious to know at what point did the organization decide just to, we're finally going to make the change, like step off the plank, we're going to make this change. And two, I thought was really interesting, we're going to make the change into something out of the box, which poses a lot more change management, a lot more change to perhaps the people going into something that maybe isn't wrapped around their current processes. I'm interested in that.
So interesting enough, the city started this venture actually a few years ago. And unfortunately, they hit a lot of roadblocks. When this is a program that you have to be heavily involved, the stakeholders need to be heavily involved, the owners, the business owners. So people, process, and technology were really ignored. It was more technology and the people in the process was really ignored. So you could say they weren't successful. And in 2019, that project came to a complete halt. They brought me on board in November 2020 because of my past experience. I've worked at many cities to do this before, the city of Miami being one of them. And from there, when we wanted to really kind of retake how the project was being handled, and we had very senior resources that were leading at each department or the business area. And our goal and objective was people, process, and technology. And we wanted to ensure that long-term, we wouldn't add headaches to the city or additional costs for maintaining customizations or configurations that were not straight out of the box, because it would increase our resource to support and continue to work on that. So
Great. Thank you for that.
You're
That's
welcome.
interesting. Jordan, I gave you a whole lot of ammo to pick and choose from. Maybe you could follow up here. But my question for you is more broad. Tell us about what you're seeing in the industry. Now, that's really broad, right? But as it relates to maybe some of the things that they were discussing, and maybe there's some things that stuck out that you might like to dig into as well. So have at it.
Well, bravo, Angela. That's you've chalked up some major milestones. I was thinking, Michael, as you said, digital transformation is a common term that we use, and I'm sure you're all hearing it. It's just, if we unpack that word transformation a bit, and I'll kind of respond to these industry challenges, is I keep wondering, are we using the right word? It feels a little bit more like a metamorphosis. And the transformation is, well, I guess first, we all have to do it. And it's not really a destination, it's a journey. It keeps going. There's always ways to improve. You can further streamline, lean out processes, improve the quality of your data. So the transformation truly is just a new way of working. It's a journey. But kind of back to the metamorphosis idea, I think of that caterpillar who has the luxury of like stopping what it's doing, and then it sits in a cocoon, and after some time, presto, we have a butterfly. But the work must be done in an organization. You got to do all the old stuff, and then you've got to change the way you're doing it and give way to a new organization. So that metamorphosis yields amazing benefits. I hope you all have had those moments, in your work where you're like, wow, that was really a lot easier than it used to be. You got the report or the information, the data was accurate, you made a swift decision, and you kind of reflect back that would have been a lot harder in the old system in the old days. But those moments of relief or victory tend to be few and far between, because at the end of the day, you got to slog, you got to get through the hard work of changing while you're doing the work. So I think that's just kind of one thing as we engage with organizations. Our first job is to make sure they're ready for the change, that they've acknowledged how they're going to do it. And we believe it's always best, if you can, that it's the existing team that drives that change, not a special group that got taken off to the side who's going to come up with the new way of work, and then they're going to do some training and everybody cuts over. Those do tend to be, you tend to miss the mark. The change from the people within, it's got it adds 20% to their day, sometimes 30%. But just kind of recognizing that this is going to be amazing when we're on the other side. B, it won't stop. It's a journey, and we're going to just continue to get better and better. C, that it is a metamorphosis. It's actual change in who we are and how we're going to operate, and that has to be done live with all the regular work that's going on. So just sort of, again, kind of preparing everybody. Once everyone's got a clear understanding of how we're going to get from A to, M and N and eventually, X and Y, but how we're going to get there, you're almost halfway through the battle. So if there's anything we want to kind of dive into in more detail there, but I really appreciate, reaching major milestones at the city there. And, Mark, I'm curious how you really do get the upfront project people to have the empathy and appreciate the digital transformation that must occur on the asset side.
Yeah, it's a learning process, and I think the best way to say is the nice thing now is I think the technology has caught up with people's expectations. And that's where I think some of the transformation starts to come in, because we're starting to see, even if we have suppliers that we're working with who traditionally would be like, well, yeah, I gave you our O&M manual. That's not what it means. How it means is, how do I start to optimize that ownership? But now the individual links in that cycle are coming together, and people have the expectation that that's going to work much more seamlessly. And the good news is 15 years ago, we were breaking down silos. Now we're actually putting this information together, because really all we were doing, we're creating broader silos back then. Now we're actually truly have the interoperability capabilities between software. And so now we have true platforms that facilitate that integration, which basically means at the end of the day, people only have to go to one or two places to get the information that they're looking for. And so we're starting to eliminate that. And, from our perspective of seeing that up front, it facilitates so much more accuracy in the ownership downstream. And I think that's also a little bit of a hidden gem that there's a lot of folks that aren't necessarily appreciating yet, but that's going to come out as the technology matures and becomes much more standard common practice.
I think building a team that really believes in the process from the top down. Because a lot of the times the projects get kicked off and it's from the bottom up. That doesn't really work. It's got to be from the top down. And when you're the top of the organization really believes in the project, the value, and I'll give you a quick example, a report of how many vendors were being paid. It would take about 10 days to pull that report. Now it's a dashboard. Somebody clicks the button and we know how many vendors were paid, how long their invoices were sitting there. It's a simple dashboard. But again, bringing that team together is critical, because the success of that phase, I can definitely call it out that it's because of the people that were involved. So strong leadership, strong project management, people that believed in the technology and believed in the vision, because a lot of the times we adapt to our day-to-day operation and we don't believe in that vision. And I agree with Jordan. Transformation is a word that I try not to use, because I believe that in digital and technology today, you have to constantly change and adapt and move and change.
Excellent. I was tempted to go rogue again and start asking questions about how do you identify the right senior leadership and build the team and the change management plan, but that'll be another discussion another time. But I do have one question, and I'll send it to all of you real quick as we close part one. Within the construction life cycle, we're talking about this metamorphosis or this constant change. There's a lot of moving pieces and processes and people. Where would you say to start? How do you identify the quick win? Is it in planning? Is it in design? Is it not necessarily a phase, but maybe a function like document management? I'm just curious to it. Maybe you could add some thoughts to there.
I'd love to jump on it first.
Go for
I
it.
think,
Don't take 10 minutes.
I wholeheartedly agree on you got to have the vision and the leadership right. And then you make or break it on the details. So I do think it's really important to start with really core fundamental data domains like contracts, invoices, payments. These are things that are the lifeblood of every team, organization, the supply chain. They're well-structured data sets. That doesn't mean the data is quality data. So that would be like an example on the construction side. Simultaneously, getting started on the asset side with accurate registers of assets and a clean definition of preventative reactive work orders. But focus on those, I would call these like foundational data domains. And once you get good structure and compliance in those basic domains, then you can move into the adjacent areas where you'll have less consistency in the process. So that's kind of where when our plan of attack would normally be, after we've done all the vision and the mapping and the buy-in, is really go after those high impact, high use, yet relatively structured data sets.
That's great.
The sexy world of data governance. That's exactly what it comes down to. I mean, nobody wants to do that, but it's, from the bang for the buck, the benefit comes from having those standards in place. I can't tell you how often we go in and when we're doing a systems assessment, and you start to ask to be like, well, do you have similar asset IDs, or do you have, the same bill of accounts? System A to system B to system C can entirely vary. And then let alone we start to look at, well, let's compare utilities to public works, to parks and rec, to DOT, and then the problem just compounds. But having the ability to sit down and be like, what are those standards that we're going to abide by? The nice thing about it is most all systems today have a degree of flexibility. There used to be a time when everything had to be an 8.3 format for some of you data nerds out there. Now you've got the ability to call data what you want it. And as long as you standardize it and remain consistent across your platforms, life is going to be a lot easier.
Excellent. Thank you. About 7 minutes. I will ask for questions at the very end. So we'll do this I'm not going to rush you, but a slightly quicker round. As we move into part two and talk about the second part of the asset lifecycle around the operation and maintenance component, I will just work back in this order again. So Mark, you just finished talking. I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit more. So when it comes to the asset and facilities, maintenance and operations with your clients, what would you say are like the biggest rocks to move, the biggest challenges, the biggest pains?
Ooh.
Biggest, not all.
Well, again, it comes down to having, I think, good, consistent standards and what you want out of it. And the fact it is now that you can start to say, what do I want to have that information tell me? So that I don't have to have, optimized maintenance separate from how am I actually maintaining the physical data side of things. This can be a one and the same activity now. So from the biggest, heaviest rocks to move, it's understanding what your expectations are coming out of that information and then having those different contractors and vendors and suppliers and all the things, provide that information to you accordingly so that you're not just kicking the problem down the road to your data team, because that's not going to solve the problem. But if you have it upstream and you put that burden on those people that are starting to provide that information to you in a common, normalized, standardized format, then you can start to work that into good process and workflow to help the system work for you. Otherwise, you end up with a log jam down the road of seeing, now I've got all this legacy data conversion I've got to do, and it's just in a different format.
Excellent. Angela, I think you touched on this earlier. Can you tell us what it might take for digital transformation to be successful? So earlier you were talking about the right people, processes. Maybe there's one of those that you'd like to provide a lesson on.
Technology, working very closely. The team was dedicated to the project. And one of the things that we did is we did a lot of data cleansing. So our very first step was to go out there and find the garbage data and clean it up. And we did 8 weeks of data cleansing. We wanted to make sure that whatever data we were going to convert was pristine and it was the data that we needed. We also took the opportunity to assess our business processes and ask the difficult questions. Why do we do it this way? And at times, right, we've done it that way for the last 30 years, right? So we asked those difficult questions and we actually went back and said, well, if we're not tied to a legislation and we're not tied to a document or a rule or a law that we have to do it, why we're doing it. So we took that approach and definitely identified a great deal of things that we were just doing just because, right? We eliminated that. But definitely having that team, dedicated team. Another approach that we did is we wanted to ensure that nothing got lost in transition. So we use our current technology, which is SharePoint, and we document, every business process. It didn't matter how many people had to update the document. You updated it and maintained it in our SharePoint site. So at every given time, we had one real set of information. So we did not depend on email at all or anything other. So that really helped a lot because we were a team of over 40 individuals and hundreds of documentation. So that maintained the project moving forward, maintained the deliverables on time, and everyone had the opportunity, again, visibility, transparency, and that ability to look at the document at any given time by anyone. So our entire project is open to a SharePoint site, whether it was the city manager or whether it was the auditors, they had the ability to access that. But definitely, people, process, technology, strong leadership in governance and control, a very solid service work order. So our statement of work was very detailed. And it included different criteria as we moved along the project, which kept the project moving successfully.
Excellent. Jordan, I'm going to ask you a question as we near our end. I'm going to borrow something that I was going to ask Angela about. So the first part of the question is, we've talked about the project, we're talking about maintaining the asset. So how are your clients aligning their maintenance and operations with their construction? Those two pieces, right? You guys do a lot of system implementation, consulting, change management, and system integration. So that'd be interesting. And maybe some folks in this conference are being called on as a senior leader to help lead that. So the second part of the question is, how do you get them to buy in to this with you?
The senior team or the broader group, Michael?
Senior leaders that would need to sponsor this for it to be successful. So you're there to help glue all this stuff together and lead a vision, but you have to work with people, with your client, to help buy in to go do it with you.
Yeah, I think we all, if we did a survey and wrote down what we thought digital meant, we would get so many different answers to that question. So we need to create a baseline, like what is digital? And there is a huge difference between analog and digital. Analog, if we remember like the old radios, you could sort of get it right and everything was fine. But digital's binary, which means it's either right or it's wrong. And 99% is wrong. So digital requires a degree of precision and accuracy in communication, in documents, in data that can be new to people. So the first thing what we really love to do is we actually have a reality capture service where we convert every physical space to a digital twin, which has the benefit of accuracy, then kind of place assets in that digital twin. So then everybody sees, oh, okay, here's my physical world. I've just cut over to a digital. I see the assets, and they kind of slowly acclimate following, coming at it from a spatial perspective, which is more natural to us. Not all of us we find databases and back-end digital systems like intuitive or natural. So we like to start the process, the digitization through that it would be spatially led, if that makes sense. And then we start to bring in the data structures into that spatial system where we go deeper and deeper. That has the advantage of letting people kind of touch it and feel it and relate to it and get past that chasm.
It's interesting. So I could see something. We're not guesstimating anymore of what this will be. That's awesome. So we are 1 minute behind. So I would like to, if there are questions, I'm sure you folks don't have a problem hanging out with me in the back. We can host some questions. I do appreciate the discussion. I feel like we could have went a lot longer. There's a lot baked in here that we could have kept going on, but I do appreciate the time. So I thank you all for the time as well. Maybe a round of applause for these pros.